Hello everybody, my name is Lucas, aka the Frozen Controller, and today, last week's video was a bit on sideboarding, so what better thing to follow up with than the top 10 all-around sideboard cards for Modern. So I'm just going to get right into this with number 10, which I have ley lines, just in general, at number 10. Because, Sanctity, Void, Punishment, even Life Force and Vitality, all are just good cards. Leyline of Sanctity, great against Storm. Leyline of the Void, great against Dredge and Storm. And any graveyard deck. But it also allows you to play a graveyard deck while still playing Graveyard Hate. Leyline of Life Force, shuts off control decks if you're playing a creature-based deck. Leyline of Vitality, I don't know. It's good in some elf decks if you're just wanting to play a bunch of creatures and you're playing against Burn or something. Leyline of Punishment, sideboard hate against Burn sideboard hate. It does shut off your Lightning Helixes, but you can even just sideboard 2 of those out if you want to make room for the ley lines. And it just kind of gets it into your opponent's head that they're just going to get finished off really quickly. And it does cost you 1 card, but it's just solid all around. Number 9, Relic of Progenitus. It goes in any deck. Within reason. If you're playing a graveyard deck, you don't want to play it, but any other deck can run Relic as graveyard hate. Against graveyard decks, they're likely not going to play into it, so if you play it, you might stop a graveyard deck from really doing any shenanigans, and if they then try to do some shenanigans, you can just wipe out their graveyard. And unlike Leyline of the Void, which is about $30 a copy, Relic is only 3 or 4. I think 3. Which makes it much more budget-friendly than other means of graveyard hate. Even Rest in Peace. That's $10 a copy. I know it just got reprinted, but the original Ravnica one might not go down that much in price. Coming in at number 8, we have Sudden Shock, which, for anyone who might not know what Sudden Shock is, it's 2 mana, 2 damage to a creature or player, but it cannot be responded to or countered because of Split Second. You can't make the creature bigger, you can't do any shenanigans, so Sudden Shock is great against Arcbound Ravager because they can't activate it in response. It's great against Counter's Company because they can't make infinite mana in response. It's good against Storm if they have Electromancer out, and then you just hit their Electromancer with that, and they can't combo out in response. It's just all around a great card. And its price tag does show it. I don't think it's been reprinted, or it might have been reprinted once at most, but I really don't think it's been reprinted. And yeah, I would recommend maybe 1 or 2 of if you have a meta that runs a lot of Affinity, Counter's Company, and I don't know, it might be good in other situations too. Coming in at number 7, we have Fulminator Mage, which it's just a way of punishing greedy decks that play a lot of non-basic lands like 5-color humans, or also good against Tron, good against Jund, which it's usually played in Jund or Abzan lists, and it does well against those. Basically does well against any deck that uses non-basic lands, which makes it a very, very usable card. It's especially good in Living End, because then you can just keep Living Ending it back and just lock out their lands. Overall, Fulminator Mage, probably not entirely worth it for the price, just because Ghost Quarter exists for $1. But if you have them, definitely don't shy away from throwing them into sideboards of red and black decks. It's an amazing card. Number 6 is a card that sees a lot more play in the main boards than sideboards, but nonetheless is a good sideboard card. Thoughtseize. I've seen affinity decks, some living end decks. Thoughtseize is just a way that on one you can get rid of your opponent's graveyard hate if they kept a hand with graveyard hate, their artifact hate if you're playing affinity. Which is why decks like Living End and Dredge and Affinity play Thoughtseize in the sideboard. Now Thoughtseize is $20 a copy, ish, but if you don't want to play Thoughtseize, Duress, Inquisition, and both of those are much, much cheaper and do very well against most of the same threats as Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is just the most open-ended example, so that's what I decided to use here. Number 5 is a twofer, because there are two cards that do the same thing in different situations. Kataki, War's Wage, and Stoney Silence. Now these two cards, both 2 mana, white spells that really hate on artifacts. Kataki War's Wage puts attacks on artifacts so that you have to keep paying 1 at the beginning of your upkeep if you want to keep your artifacts up. Stoney Silence prevents their abilities from being activated. Kataki War's Wage just shuts down Affinity because they have to start tapping their mana rocks to pay for their things. Even some of their lands are artifacts. So it becomes really hard for them to win the game. Whereas Stoney Silence is better against decks like Lantern Control, where they'll probably have the mana, but what they do is they just keep milling you out. But with Stoney Silence, it locks out their abilities. Now, both these are definitely good against other decks. Equip costs, like if someone's playing a deck with swords in it, Stoney Silence is good for that. I personally would give an edge to a Kataki War's Wage, but Stoney Silence is no joke. Number 4, we're starting to get into the ridiculously expensive cards with Ensnaring Bridge. Now this sees play in a great many decks. Sees play in Lantern Control, Mainboard, Mill, Mainboard or Sideboard, Burn, Sideboard, and it even sees play in some Control decks as a sideboard option. If you're playing it's like a rack deck or something. Speaking of which, it also sees play in 8-rack, Mainboard. Now this is just a good thing to have if you have Tooth and Nail in your meta, or if you have Titan Shift in your meta. Because if their main win condition is attacking with Primeval Titan or attacking with Emrakul, Ensnaring Bridge stops them from being able to do that. And if you're playing against a deck that likes to make you discard cards, then Ensnaring Bridge, drawn on turn 3, where you can play it, becomes something that they basically have to stop playing to get around it. Like, against Liliana the Veil decks, Ensnaring Bridge just stops them, as long as you can deal with their Liliana. Otherwise, they're going to make you choose between your bridge and your other permanents. Coming in at number 3, Anger of the Gods. This one I throw up here just because the amount of play it sees in sideboards. This can be seen in the sideboard of pretty much any red deck. It's just a cheap board wipe, a 3 mana, gets rid of everything on the board in most of the time. In Modern, there isn't much above 3, like you might have to worry about Tarmogoyf, or a bigger Sylvan Advocate or Scavenging Ooze or something. But for the most part, a lot of threats in Modern get hit by Anger of the Gods, which makes it just a great card. And if you're playing against Dredge, and they have a huge board state, 1 Anger wipes out their board state and basically resets them. Like, 1 Anger against Dredge can exile all their creatures that they can recur from the graveyard, basically forcing them into Conflagrate Plan, which you can stop with something like Relic or Graftaker's Cage. Just a whole bunch of things that stop spells in the graveyard. Even Ashes of the Abhorrent. Number 2, we have a card that is ridiculously expensive due to a lack of print. However, it earns its price tag with how powerful it is. Engineered Explosives. Not good if you're playing a 1 or 2 color deck, but if you're playing 3 or more colors, Engineered Explosives becomes the best board wipe available to you. Because you get to choose a converted mana cost by how many colors you put into it. You can even choose 0, because it's X with no other cost. Then you pay 2 and destroy all non-land permanents with the same converted mana cost as this. This Engineered Explosives. Run it as a 2 of, because it's just that good. I just went back and added the numbers I would suggest playing of these cards. Ensnaring Bridge is 1 to 4 because it doesn't see a ton of sideboard play, but nonetheless it is a ridiculously powerful sideboard card. So if you want to include it, you can really include any number of copies, and you might do okay. I'll just go over these really quick. Rest in Peace, Graveyard Hate. Gets rid of everything. Great card. But you're locked into white, and it's not as budget as Relic, so it ultimately is a little lower. Croson Grip gets rid of artifacts enchantments at instant speed with split second, and gets rid of problem artifacts enchantments amazingly well. Definitely worth running as a 1 or 2 of. Sacred Ground. Great for Tron decks or just decks in general. Fights against land destruction like Fulminator Mage and Ghost Quarter. Core Firewalker. Play it against burn, play it with burn, gains life, you're good. Destructive Revelry, the only thing in red that can deal with enchantments. It does require you to be running green, but let's face it, red is often paired with green. Kitchen Finks, life gain. You can run in green or white. Great card. Now, coming in at number 1, if you look at the rest of the piece, or if you look at the rest of the list and our honorable mentions, there's one card that some people might be thinking is just straight up missing. Blood Moon. Undoubtedly the uncontested king of the sideboard. So many decks in Modern use multicolored or non-basic lands and Tron lands and non-basic lands in general that Blood Moon is just a powerhouse. Basically makes it so every deck is running mono red. Now this can be taken care of by playing a lot of basics, which is what you would do if you're playing a Blood Moon deck. If you're not playing a Blood Moon deck, unless you're like built super budget and using like Abundant Growth or something, then Blood Moon is the counter to multicolored decks. And if the deck isn't playing red, then basically they have to have gotten their basics out. Which is actually why, like, undoubtedly, Blood Moon is the reason why in Game 2s people will often not go shock into fetch, or fetch into shock, because if they do, they're vulnerable to Blood Moon. So they get basics out of their deck first, and then they start playing their non-basics. If anyone has any ideas of something that might be better than something on this list, let me know in the comments down below. I am open to other ideas. This is just from looking at sideboards online. This is just my opinion based on what I've seen, which is a lot of deck lists, but still. There's some cards that some people might think should be on this list, like, for instance, Gutshot. I heartily disagree. Gutshot is good in decks such as Kiln Fiend and Kiln Fiend. Maybe Storm, I don't know. It doesn't draw a card, which is why Probe was used in Storm. And Storm already has Noxious Revival as a free spell. But in general, the cards that see the most play in sideboards. Of course, some of these are definitely subjective. You'd have to be playing red for Blood Moon, Anger, and yeah, for Blood Moon, Anger, you have to be playing red. For ley lines, they're only really good if you get them in your opening hand. Some of them don't see a ton of play in sideboards. They're just thrown in because they're so powerful, such as Ensnaring Bridge. And some of them some of them would see a lot more play in sideboards if they were more readily available, like Engineered Explosives and Fulminator Mage, both of which have only seen one printing, as far as I know. So, yeah, that's been in top 10 modern sideboard cards. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.